The rain started just after midnight, a slow, steady drizzle that painted the quiet suburb in muted shades of gray. Streetlights flickered through the mist, illuminating the neat row of identical houses that stretched endlessly down Willow Bend Lane. Inside one of them, a woman sat on the kitchen floor, her phone trembling in her blood-slicked hands. Lila Carter's voice cracked as she spoke into the receiver. By morning, Willow Bend Lane seemed untouched by the chaos of the previous night. Sunlight glimmered on wet pavement, reflecting the neat rows of identical homes and freshly mown lawns. But inside the Carter house, the air felt heavier, as if the walls remembered the screams that had echoed hours before. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones as reporters flashed cameras through windows. Outside, police tape fluttered in the breeze, a boundary between ordinary life and the darkness inside. Detective Renee Morales sipped her coffee, standing silently near the doorway, and watched as Lila tried to smooth her nightgown and pull herself together. There was a stiffness to her movements, rehearsed, almost precise. Lila's past with Evan began to unravel under Morales's careful questioning. On paper, they were the ideal couple. She, a compassionate trauma therapist known for helping clients through their darkest moments. He, a rising investigative journalist with awards and a growing social media following. Friends gushed about their apparent chemistry, their shared love of art galleries, weekend hikes, and quiet dinners at home. But Morales knew to look beyond appearances. In the hallway, she noticed the framed photographs lining the wall. Evan always smiled broadly, arms around Lila. But in almost every picture, Lila's smile was just a fraction too small, her eyes darting away from the camera lens, subtle cracks in a curated facade. One of Lila's colleagues arrived, a co-worker from the clinic who had grown close to her over the years. Her voice trembled slightly, even as she recounted the couple's history. Lila, she's strong, but Evan could be intense. Protective, maybe too much. I've seen him get jealous over the smallest things. Morales nodded, absorbing every word. Jealousy can look harmless from the outside, she said, but it can turn dangerous. The coworker hesitated. There were phone calls, secret ones. Lila never said who it was, but I think it made him furious once. They argued in the parking lot, loudly. I remember people staring. Lila's fingers twitched at the mention. She didn't correct her colleague, didn't even flinch. There was a subtle weight in her silence. A story left unsaid. Description. The morning light streamed through half-open blinds, casting striped shadows across the polished hardwood floor. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, undisturbed by the earlier frenzy. Outside, the wind rattled the mailbox, and a single bird perched on the roof, quiet and still, watching the unfolding drama below. The house, with its neat exterior, masked tension and secrets that could have shattered anyone who lived within. Morales traced the pattern of interactions between Lila and Evan over the past months, interviewing friends, family, and neighbors. Accounts were conflicting. One moment they were charming, flawless, the next, tense and sharp. Lila's calm demeanor at the scene contrasted starkly with reports of heated arguments, emotional manipulation, and Evan's controlling tendencies. She recalled one call log from Evan's phone, a record of messages sent to Lila at all hours. Why didn't you tell me? Where were you? I don't trust you anymore. The repeated insistence, the subtle coercion, painted a picture Morales already knew all too well. Love was not always innocent. Morales leaned against the doorway of the living room, eyes drawn to the locked basement door, still concealed in shadow. Something told her it held answers, a hidden dimension to the life they shared. Lila sat on the couch, head bowed as Morales approached. People see what they want to see, she murmured. Sometimes the truth is far more complicated. Her words hung in the room, heavy with unspoken questions. Lila's gaze lifted, meeting Morales's, hinting at stories waiting to surface, secrets, betrayals, and uncharted darkness. "Please, please, someone, you have to come. He's gone. There's blood everywhere." Her words trembled with disbelief, as if saying them made them more real. On the other end, the dispatcher's voice remained calm, professional, detached. "Ma'am, is anyone else in the house?" Lila looked around. The house was silent, eerily so. The faint hum of the refrigerator was the only sound that reminded her she was still awake. "No," she whispered. He's gone." Sirens broke the silence moments later, cutting through the rain. Red and blue lights flashed against the window, scattering color across the pale kitchen walls. Two officers entered cautiously, their boots leaving wet prints on the hardwood. They found Lila curled near the counter, her nightgown torn, streaks of blood drying on her wrist. The living room told the rest of the story, or at least part of it. A broken lamp. A wine glass shattered in a pool of crimson. But no body. Detective Renee Morales arrived shortly after, coat drenched, expression unreadable. She moved through the scene with a calm precision that came only from years of seeing too much. Her eyes scanned the room. No signs of forced entry, no muddy footprints, no trail leading out. Only chaos contained within 4 perfect walls. Lila's voice trembled again as she stood, clutching her arms as if they were the only thing holding her together. "He was here," she said. "Evan was right here. We were arguing. Then I went upstairs, and when I came down, he was gone." Morales studied her carefully. "And the blood?" Lila's eyes darted to the floor. "It wasn't mine." There was something hollow in her tone, like a line rehearsed too many times. Rain lashed harder against the windows as technicians moved through the house, photographing everything. Blood spatters, broken glass, the faint outline of a handprint on the counter. Morales stood in the corner, jotting notes, her gaze flicking occasionally to Lila, who sat wrapped in a gray blanket, eyes distant, unblinking. Description: the house was a museum of stillness. The flickering lights turned everything into a stuttering film, frames of grief, confusion, and something darker. The air smelled faintly of iron and wine. On the wall, a family photo smiled mockingly. Evan's arm around Lila, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Morales crouched beside the blood pool, her gloved hand tracing the edge. "No sign of dragging," she murmured. "Whoever bled here didn't move far." One of the officers spoke from the hallway. "Basement door's locked, detective. Key's not in sight." Lila turned sharply. "That door's always been locked. Evan said it was just storage." Her statement hung in the air like a question no one wanted to answer. Morales made a note, her eyes narrowing. "Miss Carter," she said softly, "can you tell me exactly what happened before you called?" Lila hesitated, then exhaled shakily. "We were supposed to have dinner. He came home late, angry. Said I was keeping secrets from him. He started yelling, then he threw the glass. I told him I couldn't do this anymore, and he just stopped. He looked at me, said something I didn't understand, and walked away. I thought he was going to the car, but..." Her breath hitched. Then I saw the blood. The words echoed against the kitchen tiles, fragile and final. Morales let the silence stretch. Description: outside, thunder rolled low across the sky. The rain had turned the yard into a mirror, reflecting the spinning red lights that painted everything in surreal color. Inside, time felt suspended, each sound exaggerated, every heartbeat amplified. Lila sat motionless as an officer took her statement. Her hands, pale and shaking, clutched the edge of the blanket. Morales studied her once more, then turned toward the hallway where the locked basement door waited like a secret. She paused, glancing back at Lila. "Don't leave town," she said quietly. "I wouldn't," Lila replied, her voice flat. I want him found. Morales nodded but didn't answer. As she stepped outside, the rain soaked through her coat, and she looked back at the glowing house. Too quiet, too clean. Something about that woman didn't fit the story. The night air carried a metallic scent as the crime scene tape fluttered in the wind. Morales exhaled, knowing this was only the beginning. Behind those locked doors and trembling words, a darker truth waited to surface. And before dawn, she would start digging. The morning after Evan's disappearance, the Carter house felt suspended in time. Sunlight filtered weakly through drawn blinds, illuminating dust motes that floated in the heavy air. Detective Renee Morales reviewed the timeline once again, flipping through pages of notes, statements, and security footage. Something gnawed at her. There were hours unaccounted for, crucial segments of the evening that no one could explain. Lila sat across from her, wrapped in a gray blanket, coffee untouched. Her eyes were hollow, yet she seemed alert to every subtle movement in the room. I was sleeping, she said finally, voice flat. I don't remember what time I went to bed. I woke up and it was gone. Morales studi at her carefully. Sleeping through what? The yelling? The glass? The blood? I don't know, Lila admitted, her hands trembling. I thought he went out. I didn't hear him leave. I didn't hear him come back. I just woke up. It wasn't the first time she had given vague answers. Something in her composure suggested she was hiding more than forgetting. Morales noted every pause, every flicker of the eyes, cataloging inconsistencies like puzzle pieces. Narration. The missing hours weren't just a gap in time. They were a void that held the truth. Security cameras from the neighborhood showed her walking from the bedroom to the kitchen around midnight, then nothing. Phone records revealed sporadic calls to unknown numbers, all unanswered. Messages had been deleted. Each vanished fragment whispered secrets, yet nothing concrete emerged. Neighbors' accounts added small, unsettling details. One reported hearing the faint sound of glass breaking at 11:47 p.m., but no one saw anyone leave. Another claimed to have glimpsed a shadow moving behind a curtained window, too quick to identify. Morales pieced these fragments together like a jigsaw puzzle missing its central pieces. Description. The house smelled faintly of bleach and damp carpet. Shadows from the blinds stretched across the living room floor, jagged lines resembling prison bars. Outside, the wind rattled the mailbox, and distant traffic hummed faintly, almost drowned by the dripping rain from the previous night. Every creak of the floorboard seemed louder than it should, as if the house itself were echoing the unspoken truths. Morales returned to the kitchen, examining the blood pattern once more. It was concentrated, almost deliberate, but there were no footprints leading out. No evidence suggested a struggle beyond the living room. She crouched, noting the small scuff marks near the basement door. "Detective," Officer Kim said, pointing to a corner of the floor. "This stain. It looks like something was dragged here, but only a few inches, then stopped." Morales' mind raced. Which means whoever, or whatever, was here didn't want it found. They staged it, or they were interrupted. She looked at Lila. "You mentioned someone else?" Lila shook her head, voice barely audible. "No. No one. Just him and me." Yet Morales sensed a silence heavier than denial. It wasn't just about Evan disappearing. It was about what happened in those hours that no one would admit. Hours slipped by in interviews and forensic checks. Morales began plotting the night in her mind like a film, each frame raising questions. Where was Evan between 11:30 p.m. and midnight? Who did Lila call? And why did her recollection feel rehearsed, precise, almost protective of the gaps in the story? Detective Renee Morales stood before the basement door, a plain wooden panel at the end of a dim hallway, yet it seemed to carry the weight of a secret too heavy to ignore. The brass knob gleamed faintly in the overhead light, unyielding. Lila had insisted it had always been locked. Just storage, she said, but Morales's instincts screamed otherwise. She crouched, examining the edges of the doorframe. Faint scuff marks suggested it had been forced open in the past, but only slightly, almost imperceptibly. Morales ran gloved fingers along the wood, tracing its imperfections like braille, trying to read the story etched in scratches and stains. Narration. Inside, hidden behind a door labeled insignificant, was often the truth people hoped no one would find. Morales thought about the missing hours, the bloodstains that didn't lead anywhere, and Lila's strange rehearsed answers. Somewhere behind this door lay the answers, the chaos waiting to be exposed. She turned to Lila, who sat stiffly on the staircase, blanket tight around her shoulders. "Ms. Carter, I need the key," Morales said, voice calm but firm. Lila hesitated, her fingers tightening around the edge of the blanket. I don't know where it is," she murmured. Her eyes flickered toward the floor, and Morales noted the slight tremor in her jaw, the smallest betrayal of composure. "Your husband's journal mentioned this door," Morales continued. "Anything in there could explain a lot, including what happened that night." Lila swallowed hard. "I don't think you're ready for what's down there." Morales paused. "I'm ready for the truth." Description. The hallway felt narrower now, walls closing in like a theater of suspense. The overhead light flickered once, casting jagged shadows that danced along the wallpaper. A faint smell of bleach lingered, mixing with the damp scent of concrete. Every step Morales took seemed amplified, echoing softly off the walls, a muted drumbeat of inevitability. Finally, Lila whispered, almost reluctantly, "It's in my office drawer. The key." Morales retrieved it, sliding the brass key into the lock. It turned with an almost imperceptible click. The door creaked open, revealing stairs that descended into darkness. Morales activated her flashlight, the beam cutting through the blackness like a surgical knife. The basement was small, windowless, and smelled of damp earth and chemicals. Bleach had been used extensively. The concrete floor gleamed unnaturally under the harsh beam. Against the far wall, a stack of cardboard boxes leaned precariously. Morales's eyes lingered on a journal sitting atop a crate, pages visible, fine, filled with jagged, anxious handwriting. She picked it up carefully, flipping to the first entry. The words spilled across the page. "I can't let him control me anymore. I can't be trapped in this life." The handwriting shifted between neat and chaotic, ink smudged in places. Morales felt a chill run down her spine. Someone had used this space not for storage, but for refuge, or perhaps preparation. A faint sound echoed from the corner of the basement. Something shifted. Morales raised her flashlight. Shadows danced, but no one was there. Yet the air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves had witnessed unspeakable acts. Dialogue. Detective. "You shouldn't be down here alone," Lila said softly from above. Morales didn't look back. "I need to know what happened here. Every detail counts. This," she waved the flashlight across the room, illuminating the journal and the boxes. "This is where it starts." Narration. The basement was a vault of secrets. Traces of hurried cleaning, scraps of paper, and remnants of a life under siege. Every object whispered fragments of the story Morales had been piecing together. The missing hours, the arguments, the control, and the fear. Behind this locked door, Evan's life and perhaps his end were documented in stark, unflinching detail. Detective Renee Morales leaned against the doorway of Lila's clinic, a building that had always seemed warm and welcoming. Sunlight poured through tall windows, casting long shadows across the waiting room. Patients' names lined the appointment book in neat, precise handwriting. On the surface, everything was calm, ordinary, but Morales had learned to distrust appearances. The key to the missing hours and the basement door led here. Somewhere in this sanctuary of mental health, the truth about Evan's disappearance and Lila's role was hidden. Morales began to piece together a troubling pattern: phone records, deleted emails, and one name recurring: AC. Ross, multiple sessions. Noah Briggs. Narration. Noah had been one of Lila's patients, a man whose appointments focused on guilt, regret, and moral ambiguity. But the deeper Morales probed, the more it became clear that these sessions weren't just therapy, they were guidance. A subtle shaping of thought, almost manipulation. In the weeks before Evan's disappearance, Noah's case notes hinted at someone he had helped disappear, though the details were deliberately vague. Morales called him in. When Noah entered the room, he appeared younger than expected, his expression nervous but practiced. There was a hint of something darker behind his eyes, a reluctance, or perhaps fear. "Mr. Briggs," Morales began, placing a file on the table, "I need to understand your relationship with Ms. Carter." Noah shifted in his chair, rubbing his hands together. I only helped her with advice. She was desperate." "Advice about what?" Morales pressed. His lips pressed together. "I can't say. Not yet. You need to understand. She trusted me. She needed guidance. I thought I was helping her cope with—" He trailed off, eyes darting toward the window. "With him." Description. The room smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic. Sunlight cut through the blinds, casting sharp stripes across Noah's face. The ticking of a wall clock sounded unnaturally loud, marking each second of confession with mechanical precision. Morales noticed a faint tremor in his hands, as though holding on to composure required every ounce of effort. Noah's confession was subtle, hesitant, but the implications were clear. He had been involved in some capacity with Lila and Evan's final days. Morales's mind raced, connecting dots from the basement, the missing hours, and the journal. The picture emerging was not one of a simple disappearance. It was a web of emotional manipulation, secrets, and careful orchestration. "Did you see what happened that night?" Morales asked, her tone low but unwavering. "No," Noah said, shaking his head. "But I knew something was going to happen. She told me she couldn't stay with." Morales's gaze hardened. She had suspected involvement beyond therapy. The basement door, the journal, the missing hours, they all pointed to preparation, planning, and someone guiding Lila every step of the way. Narration. Noah's admission shed light on a hidden dimension of the case. Lila's actions were not spontaneous, but influenced, at least in part, by a patient she had brought too close into her life. The therapist's office, once a sanctuary, had become a workshop of manipulation. Detective Renee Morales returned to the precinct, a small digital recorder in her hand. It was recovered from Evan's phone, a fragment of his final night, partially erased but still intact enough to tell a story. She pressed play, the tiny speakers crackling as if the device itself hesitated to reveal the truth. The voices were muffled at first. A low hum of tension, a distant sound of shuffling, then a sharp, angry edge. "You think you can fix me like one of your patients?" Evan's voice rang out, frustration and fear intertwined. "No, Evan, I can't fix you. I can only stop you," Lila's calm, deliberate tone replied, cutting through the static. Morales froze. The recording wasn't just an argument. It was a confession hidden in a confrontation. Every word, every inflection, hinted at emotional control, desperation, and the escalation that had led to that fateful night. Narration. Listening to the recording, Morales felt a chill. The sound of rain outside Evan's apartment mingled with their voices, as if nature itself were bearing witness. The argument was brief but loaded with menace. Evan had discovered inconsistencies, hidden calls, and Lila's mysterious absences. He questioned her loyalty, her intentions, unaware that the seeds of his fate had already been planted. The detective played it again, slow, frame by frame, capturing pauses and subtle sounds, a drawer sliding, the faint scrape of a shoe, a door clicking in the background. Small details, easily overlooked, now formed a pattern. Someone else had been in the room, or at least had been orchestrating events carefully to leave no trace. Description. The precinct was dimly lit, fluorescent bulbs buzzing overhead, files stacked in haphazard towers, coffee cups stained with the remnants of long-forgotten breaks, the hum of computers and distant chatter. Yet Morales's focus was absolute. The recorder's crackle filled the air, the voices of Lila and Evan suspended like ghosts between her ears. Shadows from the blinds cut across her notes, jagged lines that mirrored the tension in the recording. Morales noted the subtle shifts in tone. Lila was calm, controlled, almost detached, while Evan's voice rose with panic and frustration. It was more than fear. It was a psychological dance, each trying to assert dominance, yet unaware of the consequences looming over them. Dialogue from the recording. Evan. Why didn't you tell me about him? About Noah? Lila. I told you everything I could. Some things are mine to bear. Evan. You can't just hide things from me, not now. Lila. It's too late for that. You've already crossed the line. The last words were muffled, followed by silence. Morales rewound the recording, listening again. Silence. The argument had ended abruptly, mid-thought, mid-confrontation. No footfalls, no screaming, only the echo of unresolved tension. Narration. This was the critical link. The recording didn't just confirm an argument, it revealed power dynamics, betrayal, and Lila's calculated emotional control. Evan's anger, fear, and confusion were palpable, and Lila's restraint hinted at planning, preparation, and determination. Every second suggested that what happened next, his disappearance, was a culmination of careful orchestration rather than chaos. Detective Renee Morales stood at the edge of Lake Marin, a thin mist curling above the water, blurring the line between reality and shadow. Early morning light barely penetrated the dense canopy of trees surrounding the lake, casting everything in a muted gray. Officers moved carefully along the shore, rubber boots sinking into soft mud, flashlights cutting through the haze. A call had come in just before dawn. A body had been spotted, partially submerged near the northern bank. Morales tightened her coat around her shoulders, her breath visible in the cold air. She had prepared herself for the worst, but nothing could erase the shock when they finally brought the tarp onto land. Narration. Evan Hale's body was heavy, wrapped meticulously in a weighted tarp that had kept him hidden from view. Morales noticed the precision immediately. Someone had taken care to ensure the body remained undiscovered for as long as possible. There were no signs of a struggle in the lake, no frantic scratches on the surrounding vegetation. Everything pointed to planning, calculation, and cold intent. The coroner approached, crouching beside the body. Looks like death by drowning, possibly incapacitation first. Time of death, roughly midnight, he muttered. Morales nodded silently, connecting the timeline to the argument captured in the recording. The missing hours, the basement secrets, and now this, the culmination of events that had begun weeks earlier. Description. Fog rose from the water in ghostly wisps. The lake's surface rippled gently, reflecting the flashing lights of emergency vehicles and police torches. The air smelled of wet earth and iron. In the distance, a loon called once, a hollow sound that seemed to mourn with the morning. The shoreline was littered with fallen leaves, streaked with mud, a quiet testimony to the struggle that had gone unseen. Morales examined the tarp carefully. The ropes binding it were tight, precise, leaving almost no trace of fingerprints, except for one set, smudged near a corner, Lila's. Morales's stomach sank. It was evidence too neat, too deliberate. Someone wanted it found, or someone had been confident the wrong hands would not discover it. Dialogue. Officer Kim approached, breaking the tense silence. "Detective, fingerprints match Ms. Carter's. She handled the tarp." Morales didn't respond immediately. Her gaze lingered on the still figure of Evan, his face partially visible, eyes closed as if sleeping. "Or, she wanted me to find him," Morales muttered, almost to herself. The officer frowned. "You mean, framing her?" "I don't know yet," Morales said quietly. "But this isn't random. There's intent here. Something calculated." Narration. The discovery of Evan's body changed everything. No longer was this a case of disappearance or psychological manipulation. It had become a homicide investigation. Yet even in death, Evan's story was tangled with secrecy, betrayal, and unseen influence. Morales felt the weight of Lila's presence looming, knowing that behind every calculated move, every careful lie, was a mind shaped by trauma and control. Further examination of the lakeshore revealed subtle marks, small depressions in the mud, faint traces of a footprint that didn't match Lila's. It suggested someone else had assisted or observed. The puzzle pieces were connecting, but the picture was still incomplete. Description. The morning mist thickened, curling around Morales's boots as she knelt beside the body. The tarp had absorbed some of the cold, damp odor of the lake, but beneath it lay the chilling perma. Nents of human life ended too soon. Her flashlight caught faint scratches on the weighted ropes, small clues hidden in plain sight. The forest seemed to hold its breath, awaiting revelation. Detective Renee Morales sat across from Noah Briggs in the small interrogation room. The fluorescent light above flickered faintly, casting harsh lines across his pale, tense face. The faint scent of disinfectant mingled with the metallic tang of adrenaline in the air. After weeks of piecing together timelines, recordings, and evidence, Morales now held the key to understanding what had truly happened to Evan Hale. Narration. Noah's hands were trembling slightly, resting on the scratched wooden table. He had been hiding in plain sight, a patient with access to Lila's life and her darkest secrets. His role had always seemed peripheral, a silent confidant. But now, under the weight of investigation, his voice would unravel the hidden threads connecting them all. Morales opened her notebook slowly, flipping to the page with Evan's timeline. "Noah," she began, voice measured. "Tell me everything you know about Lila and Evan that night. Don't leave anything out." He swallowed hard, eyes flicking toward the mirror, then back to Morales. I helped her. I didn't think it would go this far," he admitted. His voice wavered, the words tasting of fear and guilt. Dialogue. "You helped her? In what way?" Morales pressed. "I gave her advice on how to handle him, how to protect herself," Noah said. "It was supposed to be temporary, just a scare. I didn't know she would—" He paused, looking down at his hands. "I didn't know he would die." Morales studied him carefully. "You knew he was alive when you helped her?" "Yes," Noah whispered. "I knew he had to be stopped. She told me he was dangerous, that he might kill her. I thought I was helping her survive." Description. The room seemed smaller now, walls closing in around the trio of memories, lies, and confessions. Fluorescent light flickered, shadows creeping across Noah's face, highlighting the tension in his jaw and the subtle taint, remor of his fingers. A clock ticked steadily, each beat echoing like a metronome over the silence of guilt. Morales leaned forward slightly, her shadow stretching toward him like a specter of justice. Narration. Noah's confession began to piece together the puzzle Morales had been constructing for weeks. Lila's actions had not been impulsive. The basement, the deleted calls, the blood patterns, all orchestrated with foresight. Noah had been the silent accomplice, providing psychological guidance, even if he had not expected the final, deadly outcome. The layers of manipulation, secrecy, and fear had all intersected in a single night of terror. "She manipulated me too," Noah said, voice breaking. "I thought I was helping her heal. But everything we planned, it wasn't just for protection. She wanted control. And she had it. She had complete control over what happened to him." Morales made a note, the puzzle pieces aligning. Missing hours, basement secrets, the recorded argument, the discovery of Evan's body, and now this, Noah's testimony. Everything pointed to a carefully constructed orchestration rather than random chaos. Dialogue. "So you're saying this wasn't just about survival?" Morales asked softly. "No," Noah said, eyes wide. "She wanted him stopped, permanently. And I didn't stop her. I thought I could guide her. I thought I could prevent the worst." Description. Outside the window, rain began to fall lightly, tapping against the glass in rhythmic patterns. The room felt suspended, a liminal space between confession and judgment, guilt and absolution. Noah's face was pale, his lips dry, but there was a subtle relief in his admission, an unburdening of a secret too heavy to carry alone. Detective Renee Morales stood in the dimly lit interrogation room, the weight of weeks of investigation pressing down on her. Across the table, Lila Carter sat upright, her expression composed, calm, almost eerily so. The journal, the recordings, and Noah's confession had all converged into this moment, a confrontation that would either unravel the truth or expose deeper layers of deception. Narration. Morales watched her closely. Lila's composure was unnerving. She seemed ready for this, prepared for every question, every accusation. Yet in her eyes lurked a flicker of vulnerability, a trace of fear that hinted at the reality behind the controlled exterior. The detective knew that only one thing could reveal the full picture, Lila's own admission. "Ms. Carter," Morales began, voice calm, firm. "We know about the basin. Bent the journal, the calls, and Noah's involvement. We know about the lake. It's time to tell the truth." Lila's fingers tapped lightly on the table. She exhaled slowly, then met Morales' gaze directly. "I did what I had to do," she said quietly. "It wasn't easy, and it wasn't impulsive. He would have hurt me, or worse. I couldn't let that happen." Dialogue. "Are you saying you killed him?" Morales asked, tone measured, almost incredulous. "Yes," Lila admitted, voice steady, calm. "But it wasn't murder. Not in the way people think. He threatened everything, my life, my sanity. I protected myself." Description. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as if the air itself carried the weight of her confession. Fluorescent lights flickered above, casting jagged shadows across the table. Rain tapped softly against the window, a rhythmic backdrop to the tension. The detective's pen hovered over her notebook, capturing each word, each pause, each subtle inflection that revealed the emotional layers beneath the confession. Narration. Lila's admission was more than acknowledgement of a crime. It was a window into her psyche. The basement, the calculated movement of the body, the orchestration of events, all of it stemmed from fear, trauma, and a desire for control over a life threatened by manipulation and abuse. Morales realized that this case was not a simple act of violence. It was a culmination of emotional manipulation, calculated defense, and psychological survival. "I planned everything," Lila continued, voice barely above a whisper. "The basement, the journal, the recordings. I knew he would push me too far. I needed evidence of his aggression, of what he was capable of. And Noah? He helped, but I was in control." Dialogue. Morales leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "And the missing hours?" "They were mine," Lila said, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk on her lips. "I needed to think, to prepare. He never saw it coming." Description. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the trees in a frantic dance. The clouds above were heavy, the sky a bruised gray. The flaw. Capture the emotional gravity of this revelation, the calm, almost clinical resolution of a woman who had survived through calculated action. Narration. For Morales, the case had transformed. Lila's confession clarified the sequence of events but also left a haunting question. How far does survival justify manipulation and death? She closed her notebook slowly, absorbing the weight of truth reflected in Lila's eyes. The detective understood that justice, while served, would never erase the complexity of emotions, power, and fear that had dictated that night. Detective Renee Morales sat alone in her office, the late afternoon sunlight fading through the blinds. Stacks of case files towered around her, coffee cups cooling on the desk. Months had passed since Lila Carter's confession, since Evan Hale's body was discovered in Lake Marin, and since Noah Briggs had revealed his reluctant involvement. Yet the case lingered, a persistent shadow over her thoughts, refusing to settle. Narration. The public had called it a shocking story, a perfect couple torn apart by fear, betrayal, and death. Headlines sensationalized the drama, calling Lila both hero and villain, painting the narrative with black and white strokes that left no room for nuance. Morales, however, knew the truth lived in the gray spaces, in moments of hesitation, and in the chilling precision of calculated survival. She stared at the photos of the lake, the basement, the journal, and the crime scene tape that had once marked the Carter home. Each image carried the weight of decisions made in fear, acts committed in desperation, and the haunting reality that one night had changed everything. Description. The office smelled faintly of paper and ink. Dust floated in thin streams of light that filtered through the blinds, settling like tiny witnesses. Outside, the city hummed softly, oblivious to the tragedy that had unfolded, unaware of the subtle lessons in control, manipulation, and the human capacity for survival. Morales's chair creaked as she shifted, the only sound besides the distant tapping of keyboards and the occasional murmur of colleagues. Dialogue. Officer Kim knocked lightly and entered. "Detective, you still thinking about the Carter case?" Morales didn't look up immediately. "Every day," she admitted. "It's not just the crime itself. It's the psychology behind it. How fear, control, and trust intersect. How someone can be both victim and orchestrator." Kim nodded slowly. "The public sees it differently. Headlines, talk shows. People want a simple story. Good versus evil." "Life isn't simple," Morales murmured. "The human mind isn't simple. And the lessons here, they stick with you. You think you've seen manipulation before, but Lila's precision, her calm in the eye of chaos, it's haunting." Narration. The aftermath extended beyond the courtroom. Lila's trial concluded with a verdict of self-defense, a ruling the public debated endlessly. Noah Briggs faced minor charges for aiding in the events but cooperated fully with authorities, his testimony pivotal. The families of all involved struggled with the emotional fallout, a quiet ache of betrayal, grief, and unresolved questions. Morales understood that justice in paperwork rarely aligns with justice in the human heart. Even months later, the detective's nights were restless. The basement, the recording, the missing hours, they remained vivid in her mind. Every detail, every nuance of Lila's confession haunted her. She could recall the calculated way Lila had handled the lake, the journal, and the orchestration of events, and it left a lasting impression of what fear-driven survival could demand. Description: the city outside darkened as evening arrived. Streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the pavement. In the office, Morales's notebook lay open, pages filled with observations, timelines, and reflections. The air was thick with the quiet hum of unresolved tension, a space where truth, fear, and moral ambiguity intertwined. Dialogue. She whispered to herself, more as confession than conversation. The mind is the most dangerous place of all, and sometimes survival is a crime in itself. Narration. The case had changed her, left an indelible mark on her understanding of human behavior. She knew the story would be remembered as sensational true crime, dissected in podcasts, documentaries, and social media threads. Yet Morales understood the deeper truth, that fear, manipulation, and desperation can drive ordinary people to extraordinary acts that blur the line between perpetrator and victim. She closed the notebook and leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. Outside, the city moved on, unaware. But inside, the echoes of that night, the lake, the basement, and the truth in Lila's eyes lingered. The case that haunted her would never fully end. It had imprinted itself on her understanding of morality, justice, and the darkness humans can harbor when pushed to the edge. The small therapy office smelled faintly of sandalwood and antiseptic. Lila Carter had returned to work after months away, her face calm, controlled, and carefully neutral. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Unaware that the woman once accused of orchestrating Evan Hale's death now sat behind a desk, waiting for her next patient. Narration. The weeks since the trial had left her cautious. Every shadow seemed scrutinizing, every glance an accusation. Yet Lila had adapted to public scrutiny with practiced ease. The journal that once documented her secret manipulations was locked away, the basement cleaned and sanitized. But she remained vigilant, aware that one misstep could unravel the delicate balance she had fought so hard to maintain. Today, a new name appeared on her appointment calendar: Ethan Ward. Morales had mentioned him in passing during the case debrief, a man struggling with anxiety, trust issues, and a deep sense of betrayal in his personal relationships. Lila had not yet met him, but instinctively, she understood the narrative that would unfold. Another individual seeking guidance, unknowingly stepping into her orbit. Description. The office was softly lit, sunlight streaming through sheer curtains, casting geometric shadows across the hardwood floor. A potted fern in the corner swayed gently as air from a nearby vent moved the leaves. The faint ticking of a clock filled the silence, punctuating the anticipation of a first encounter. A leather-bound notebook rested on the desk, pristine and empty, ready to capture the thoughts of the next soul who sought help, or perhaps guidance beyond therapy. Lila straightened the stack of folders and glanced at the clock. 10 minutes to arrival. She sipped tea from a white porcelain cup, eyes flicking to the doorway with subtle tension. She knew that the first moments would set the tone. Trust, vulnerability, and the delicate power dynamic between therapist and patient. Dialogue. The door creaked open and Ethan stepped inside. "Hi, I'm Ethan Ward. I'm here for my first session," he said, voice hesitant. Lila smiled gently, gesturing to the chair opposite hers. "Welcome, Ethan. Please have a seat. Take your time to get comfortable. This is a safe space." Ethan lowered himself into the chair, fidgeting with his hands. I've had trouble trusting people, relationships, friends, even family. I feel like I can't connect without losing control. Lila leaned forward slightly, her calm voice a subtle anchor. That's understandable. Many people feel that way after difficult experiences. Here, we'll explore those feelings together, at your pace. Narration. As Ethan spoke, Lila observed the small tells, micro-expressions, hesitation, and body language that revealed more than words. Her mind cataloged them, not with malice, but with meticulous care. Each detail would guide the conversation, shaping insights and creating the structure that patients often needed, whether they realized it or not. Yet beneath her professional exterior, a shadow lingered. Memories of Noah, Evan, and the lake surfaced briefly, reminders of past manipulation and its consequences. She had survived, adapted, and learned, but she also knew the power of influence, subtle guidance, and the ways in which human minds could be shaped without them knowing. Description. The sunlight shifted, brushing Ethan's face with warmth, highlighting the tension in his jaw and the uncertainty in his eyes. Outside, the city noises were faint but constant, a reminder of life moving forward, indifferent to personal traumas. The room seemed sus,